So if I, for example, speak like this, I wouldn't be heard. So if I, for example, speak like this, I wouldn't be heard. Okay, it would be heard. So if I, for example, speak like this, I wouldn't be heard. Okay, it would be heard.
Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. I'm Zahra, aka the founder of Utopic Edu from Turkey. We will be presenting our webinar about education equity and how politicians should take action based on this issue. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for today. I will start with Mr. Marvin. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education with a major in history in 2019. With a passion for teaching and student development, he began his teaching career as the PRO faculty member at Oliver's College. Currently, he serves as a faculty member in Social Studies Department at Perna-Cube National High School. And he also serves as a faculty advisor of Spring Secondary Learning Government Student Council for Junior High School. We have other guest speakers from Turkey. Ali Otuzoglu is a student from Yale and doing his internship at Deloitte. He's passionate about education equity and trying to help students from the earthquake zone of Turkey. His project is called Anatolian Classroom, and he's doing an amazing job with helping students apply their dream universities. And now we have Kuzey Kantaycıoğlu. He's a student from Stanford and also working with ID to help students. He's currently working at Q Turkey as an editor-in-chief and also a famous podcaster. Lastly, our next guest speaker, Deborah Hickson, is a teacher from Broward Schools. She did an amazing job for education, like increasing school resources, teacher pays, and school safety. Her campaign includes ensuring safety, expanding mental health support for students.
Okay, our meeting will unfold as follows. We will start with certain of the students explaining their current national education systems. Later, our moderator will then ask general questions, trying to pick one person from each country, giving them 1 to 2 minutes to respond. Students will then be allowed to ask questions in the chat, which moderators will again go through and pick towards the end, and later panelists will proceed with their presentations. Any questions that surface, as always, write them in the chat, and the panelists and the moderators will review them, and afterwards you'll be given the chance to ask them to the panelists.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Anya, and I'm the founder of ActionPAKT Global, and I will be introducing everyone today from our management team, as well as telling you the roles that they will take during this webinar. So first we have Zara, who is the president of Utopic Edu Global, which is ActionPAKT's chapter in Turkey. So Zara will be moderating time for our panelists today. Next, Albert is the president of the Young Politicians Convention in Spain, and he will be moderating chat for our webinar today. Next, Reva is the president of West Broward's ActionPAKT chapter, and she will be asking questions to our lovely panel today. And last, Vera she's the president of the Philippines chapter of ActionPAKT, and she will be acknowledging questions in the chat as well as in the call. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy.
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to begin the panel with a couple of questions. If you guys are part of the panel, just unmute and I'll spotlight you guys so that all of our viewers can see you. I'm very proud to say that we have attendees from over 10 countries, so we're hoping to have some really different perspectives be shared on this meeting. So our first question for the panelists is, in your view, what are the defining characteristics of an exemplary education system globally, and why do these aspects contribute to its success? So we'll go one by one, just unmute. Thank you.
Do you have an order you'd like us to go in?
No, at the moment, no. You guys can just unmute or raise your hand, however works best for you all. But just take a minute or two to answer each question because we have a lot of questions from students to our panelists.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start since I am muted. Good morning, everyone. I'm Debbie Hickson. I'm the vice chair of the Broward County School Board in Florida. We are the 6th largest school district in the country, so pretty big school district. For global education, I think really education needs to be able to be forward-thinking and seeing what skills students are going to need to be successful. 10 years down the line, right? By the time they get out of school, to be successful in a global economy, in a global world. It looks way different now than it did 5 or 6 years ago, especially after COVID. So I think it's really important for the education system to be able to see what those skills are going to be down the line and implement them in the curriculum that they have when their students are in starting in middle school, because it'll change by the time they get through high school. So I think it's important for education system to be forward-thinking.
I guess I can go next. My name is Ollie. I'm a student at Yale University. I'm currently working at Deloitte. And I wanted to answer this question with the perspective of someone who enjoys the arts quite a lot. I came to college wanting to both study the social sciences and the arts. And so I think that a global education system is one that develops the creativity of its students while also maintaining a standard of rigor of thought and analytical thinking. I think a good student in this world, especially given the developments in AI, is one who is able to think both creatively and also use the resources in STEM and other more analytical forms of thinking that have developed in recent years. And so looking forward to the next couple of years in college, I want to advocate for an education system that helps its students flourish in these fields.
I could go next then. Hello everyone, my name is Kuzey Kantarcıoğlu. I'm an incoming first year at Stanford University, hoping to study computer science and linguistics. Since I'm really into STEM and coming from a background in STEM education myself, I should say that equal access to educational opportunities, especially in the sciences and technology and engineering fields, is crucial for a country's or overall world's development. And I mean, not every nation or certain regions in a nation has that access to educational opportunities in STEM, especially in the natural sciences. Not every school has a lab that's up to standards in chemistry or biology teaching, for instance. And definitely not every school has access to computers around the globe or coding resources or electronics resources, which is a huge loss in my opinion. I mean, we could be losing hundreds or thousands or perhaps even in the global scale millions of future scientists and engineers and technological experts that would have progressed technology. And I think that this educational inequality is something that should be rectified immediately if we want to have a more equal and more efficient educational system globally.
Okay, so for our next question, a student asked, how can we ensure equitable opportunities for students in small cities and non-private school backgrounds to participate in international education programs such as study abroads?
I guess I'll go again. I think it's important to bring the community in, right? Business partners, they often want to be involved in education and they really don't know how they can help. So if you could partner students who are interested in that abroad studying with business partners that would be willing to sponsor them and not just ask for money, but how would they truly partner? What would that student be bringing back for that business that would allow them to be a partner in that experience? I think we don't leverage the fact that we have businesses that want to participate in education as well as we should.
I guess I can go next. Actually, I think this is a great question to ask because we have a lot of discussions about these opportunities for college students and also high school students all across the world. And I actually founded an education equity initiative with this in mind. A lot of times the college application process is very overwhelming, and finding these educational opportunities is possible, but it does require a lot of research and effort just to get through the process itself. I think a lot of times it's best to filter out what opportunities are best suited for us, especially when you look through LinkedIn or any educational resources. We kind of see almost like a flurry of advertisements that come across to us. And I think in this process, it's really valuable to have meaningful relationships, even beyond just networking, that help us find these opportunities. In the end, I think the best type of education is one that feels like a conversation. And so to find opportunities for study abroad and even any other fields like research, university conferences, career development, etc. I think it's really important to have people that are able to kind of parse through this flurry of resources and speak to you about what matters and what doesn't.
Me personally, I feel like I agree with Ali that there are a flurry of opportunities out there, and sometimes you have to find that diamond in the rough, especially with the bombardment of adverts that we're getting nowadays. So it's really currently it's a matter of a student taking personal initiative to procure such resources, but I do believe that educators and counselors and policymakers, like belonging to a state or a board or a school, should also be encouraging students or giving them the necessary guidance that'll help them reach these opportunities, even if the students themselves are not aware of the existence of such opportunities or do not have the necessary resources or motivation themselves to take personal initiative at the moment. Because, well, although the resources are out there, not everyone has the time or money or, say, motivation to seek them, or the knowledge, perhaps. So I think it's also a matter of policy.
Those are really insightful answers. Would anyone else like to go, or should we move on? Okay, so on that topic, what strategies should be implemented to ensure that students from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds have equitable access to quality education?
So I'll go again. So, in the public school system, and I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but, in the United States, that's the whole purpose, right, of public education, is to allow everyone access, because we know that education can change the trajectory of someone's life, because it provides them an opportunity that they wouldn't get elsewhere. So I think the idea that giving them access means you're providing them a safe space to learn, where they feel like they're heard and they're valued, so that they can absorb the information that you're giving them. But you also have to provide the education that is relevant to them. So you need to provide opportunities for things that matter to them in their community. Like we're a very large school district, so what happens and is relevant in District 1 may not be relevant and valuable in District 6. So it's really important that when you're providing education, you're looking at the student body that you're presenting to, and that you're giving them opportunities that make sense and are relevant for them. But again, the idea of public education is that we allow everyone, doesn't matter what you look like, what your ability is, what religion you follow, who you love. We take every student in to give them the opportunity, but it's important for us as policymakers to make sure the opportunities we're providing are relevant for those groups of students that come to us.
I think that was a great response, and I kind of want to add a couple thoughts of my own. In partnership with Kuzey and many other people in this project, are running this project called Anatolian Classroom, where we're aiming to help students from disadvantaged backgrounds access quality education. It's a mix of mentorship and academic guidance. And I want to kind of share a couple thoughts that I've observed in this process. I really agree that policy, especially one that centers around community, is one of the most, if not the most valuable thing in an equitable education. But I want to also add a couple things as someone who's experienced college in the United States. One thing we've talked about a lot this past year is the Supreme Court decision that has overturned the use of affirmative action in college admissions, which I think is a huge setback in promoting equitable education. We often talk about how what matters most is not just equality, but equity, which is not just the same thing as presenting everyone with the same opportunities, but weighing those opportunities to the context in which a student has received their education. So I really think that that emphasis on community is very important, and that a student's educational background is a very important factor in how their education should be tailored to them. Having said that, I also think it's very valuable to have not just online resources, but like face-to-face resources that feel like an actual conversation rather than just a resource or an opportunity. Oftentimes, what impacts us most in our educational journey are not resources or books or just other like projects, but people that impact us. So I think it's really important to have people, again, that really help push this narrative in every community.
Well, I also think that in order to have this system where students from disadvantaged backgrounds are helped, we need educators and people who care, and we need to enable these people to have change, and we need to empower these people so that they may empower others. And what I mean by that is there's a saying where we say teachers are like candles in a way, where they give from themselves so that they may light the way for others. But if we view teachers as only these candles, if we expect them to self-sacrifice so much, but don't support them through proper means of budgeting or giving them a living wage, then we shouldn't be expecting these teachers to light the way for others. It'd be very difficult, even if these teachers are highly motivated in helping students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Without supporting these teachers, we can't have a self-sufficient education system. And that's why I think it's also a matter of protecting and financing our teachers and educators so that they may be the backbone to a more equitable system.
Thank you, guys. I think that provided a great collective of different perspectives on that question. So moving on, while advocating for educational equality, there are concerns about grade inflation in private schools. How should policymakers address this issue while supporting the existence of private education institutions? Also, I'd quickly like to remind all of our attendees that you are able to ask questions in the chat, and Albert will be presenting them afterwards.
So as a school board member for public schools, this is not my favorite answer, but in Florida and much of the United States, they've actually begun to give vouchers to students that attend private schools to help subsidize some of the education there. And, it takes away from the public funds. So that is a bit frustrating for us as policymakers. But I would say if it was done in a way that was equitable, in other words, the laws and the policies and the procedures that we have to follow through a public school system, if they also had to follow that in the same system where they were giving those taxpayer funds to, then I think we would have less of a concern with it. But it does provide students with more access to the private schools, when they provide vouchers, it doesn't pay for the whole amount that private schools cost, but it does give them some relief in the cost of it. Not that I'm supporting it, but I'm, it just is something that we have here in the United States.
I think that's a great answer and also a really important issue to address. Another thing that this question brings to my mind is that grades are ultimately a subjective measure of success. I think people who work in college admissions, they do know that each school has their own policy regarding grades, and grade inflation is also a huge issue, not only in private high schools, but also in college as well, which can also extend to finding career resources and opportunities that kind of advantage some applicants over others. Ultimately, I think the fact that grade inflation is on the rise points towards more standardized measures like standardized tests. This past admission cycle, a lot of colleges have spoken about how provoking the necessity of standardized tests has actually worsened the quality of applicants because of matters pertaining to this. Oftentimes, not having standardized tests means that an admission committee has an access to less information about an applicant versus measures that are standardized overall. For example, even the IB or just education systems that are more global, I think have the chance to provide a fairer view of students. And also, I want to stress about the part of a student's application to college that is more objective, like teacher recommendations that kind of provide like a more deepened perspective on a student, and using those resources to best present himself in the college application process.
Well, I definitely believe that grades do not determine or do not say much about the student's success in their high school career, considering the fact that a lot of schools are unfortunately participating in grade inflation. So from an academic perspective, students should ask themselves what a high school education means to them and what their high school education is supposed to result in. So success is something I believe that students should define for themselves if they want to actualize their potential and actualize their dreams. But when it comes to college admissions, I believe that grade inflation really isn't something that students should worry too much about, especially if they feel like their grades are not being inflated enough and if they feel like they'll be at a disadvantage compared to students in private schools whose grades might have been more inflated. Because it is true that admissions officers are evaluating each and every student in the context of their state and their school. So they will know if your school, on average, gives grades that are lower than, say, a private high school, which might be participating in grade inflation. So it's not an issue for college admissions per se, but it may be hard sometimes for a student to deem their own or set their own metric of academic success. So yeah, that's something that's left to the students, I'd say.
Those are definitely some thought-provoking answers. Thank you all. So if online education remains a permanent fixture in the system, what measures can be taken to support students with limited internet access or other barriers? And how can policymakers ensure these students are not left behind in the digital learning environment?
Well, I know we have taken measures here in Broward County to work with internet providers to make sure we provide hotspots and, students have access to computers, or, many of them use their phones for a lot of the same thing they would use a computer for, iPads, right? So I think that that's something that on a global scale, there, again, I'd say reach back to companies that want to partner and want to be part of education and have them look at that on a global scale on how they could provide the iPads or the laptops as well as hotspots to communities that don't traditionally have that access, because online learning is important. We had a program here in Broward County called LEO more than a few, quite a few years ago, where students are actually working with other students in other countries to develop a product. In our school, they did a solar powered battery that they could then produce, because that's really what happens in our global world today, right? People, they collaborate with each other. They don't have to be in the same room. They don't even have to be in the same country. So it's important that we give them the skills and the access to understand how to do that, because it's very well maybe the way their job works when they get a job out once they've graduated high school and college and all of those things. So again, I would say, policymakers in each country should really be trying to partner with those Microsoft people and Apple and all of that in order to be able to provide access either at a reduced rate or somehow in a partnership program, to be sure that we're enabling them. Because as was said earlier, there could be the next Pulitzer prize winner or Nobel Peace Prize winner, and all these people that they're tucked away somewhere, and they just don't have access to all of the knowledge that would maybe make them rise to be amazing, find the cure to cancer, or Alzheimer's, or any of those things. So it's really important for all of us, not just in one country, but across the globe, to make sure that we're providing appropriate education for everyone, so that we're giving them the ability to help us as a community as well.
To add on to that, I think a lot of times regarding internet equity, some of the most accessible features of the internet are those that most capture our attention and exploit our tendency to pay attention to some things over others. Algorithms that are made to kind of grab our attention are usually the most exploitative of our cognitive biases. So in that sense, I think internet equity is a very tricky question to answer, because a lot of times these things also run through socioeconomic classes and different levels of opportunity. And so addressing this issue is a matter of careful discourse, in my opinion.
I think we should also ask ourselves whether it's time to consider the internet a public utility like, say, electricity or water. And again, that's a matter of policy. And unfortunately, especially in the United States, internet connection is say monitored or supplied by just a handful of large corporations, as is with a lot of other nations in the world. So, I mean, either educators and states could collaborate with such corporations or find other businesses to act as a liaison in this matter, or some policy changes could be made to ensure that each and every household in a nation has access to a certain amount of internet, just like with, say, water or electricity.
Thank you all. I think that those were some really great arguments. So now some of these questions are more personal to you guys as leaders and students. So reflecting on your journey, how would your younger self perceive your current achievements?
Oh, interesting. My younger self was probably way long ago than the other panelists. But, I was a teacher for 32 years before I became a school board member. And education has always been very, very important to me. I actually went to college to be a medical examiner. It may seem odd, but it was important for me to be able to provide comfort and answers for people. So I've been interested in science and solving problems. for my whole life. So, I do that in a different way now as a school board member, trying to solve problems to make sure that we do provide equity and equitable access to our students through resources and teacher pay and better facilities. And really the diversity. So Broward County has a lot of diversity in it. It's really important for me that all students, again, that come through the door know that they're being heard and valued. So, my younger self would probably never believe that I became an elected official, because I really was not, I vote all the time, but not really interested in being one of those leaders. But sometimes, you have life changes that happen that put you in a position, and you either step up to the plate to help make the changes, or you sit back and you continue to complain. So, I think I was shy as a young child. I was heavy and picked on a lot. So I think that my younger self will be pretty proud of the fact that I've landed where I am, and I'm able to make a difference for students in our community, really, because education really is the backbone of our community. And I think it's important we remind people of that. So.
I would say that I have achieved some of my, say, goals, or I didn't have specific goals such as, say, going to Stanford or studying computer science. Those are things that developed organically throughout my middle school and high school career. But I should recognize that I've had a lot of opportunities given to me, both in middle school and high school, and I was privileged to have very supportive parents and very supportive teachers, and to be in an educational system that supports the students, which is something that not everybody gets. So I am happy with where I am right now, but I do feel like it is my responsibility as a student who has benefited from all these different opportunities to give back to the community where I come from. And the world can only develop if people who are successful in one way or another can use that success to elevate others and to help others they're at where they came from. So I see that as my current responsibility, and that's why with Adi, I'm currently trying to work to elevate students in Turkey and help them with their college application processes and their educational processes. And yes, that would be my outlook on things. And I should say that, STEM education really is an interesting journey, and to have that sense of passion for something instilled in me at such a young age is a huge motivator. And I do believe that every single student out there should have some sense of curiosity instilled within them at a young age by exposure to a lot of different subjects in both the sciences and the humanities.
Thank you both for those reflections. Our other panelist is unfortunately having some technical issues, so we're going to keep going on in hopes that he can join us again later. So for the next question, how do your current educational initiatives compare to your earlier projects or goals?
Well, as a school board member, I try to continue to educate myself about what's happening in our district so that we can make sure our students get what they need, but also trying to keep up with what's happening in a global world to be sure that our curriculum is reflecting what our students need to continue to grow and then have those opportunities that make them successful. As a teacher, we went through professional development often. I was a science teacher. Like I said, I've been a scientist and a science nerd for a while. So, it's important to just be able to educate yourself every day on something different. There's a lot of laws that come out. So I find myself really looking more about educational law and policy policy, which I wouldn't have done in my younger years, right? Because I was really just focused on being a science teacher, environmental science, and really encouraging our students to reduce their carbon footprint and understand why the environment is so important. So I still try to do that in the context of looking at what we do to make sure our students are successful and that we're implementing policy in a way that makes sense for everybody. So it kind of changed my educational background, but I also love going to the schools and talking to the students. Like Riva, we had a nice conversation last week, so I learned a lot about some of the struggles the students are having, and I think it's important to do that often so that we can make sure that we are providing an education that's equitable and valuable for all of our students. So I always appreciate that informal education that I get when I go out and speak to students.
Before joining the Anatolian Classroom Initiative, I was involved in quite a few community involvement projects, especially regarding coding and mathematics. I was, and still am, also a quantum computing lecturer at this organization, non-profit organization called QWorld, and one of the leaders at its Q Turkey branch. And I was also the team leader of a FIRST Robotics competition team, and I believe that FRC FIRST Robotics competition is a wonderful program that pushes students to both be engaged in STEM and also engage socially in their community. So I'd encourage everyone here and every student actually to try to see if the FIRST Robotics competition is for you. Yes, going back to my involvement with our FRC team, we did have projects, usually local projects targeting schools in Turkey and schools in Turkey's earthquake zone. And we try to help them, again, with having equitable access to STEM education, especially through online classes. And it was, it's a valuable experience, not valuable, but a powerful experience to be able to see students who you inspire that they can do something new with the information that you've given them, or that you have motivated them to pursue a branch that they hadn't seen themselves doing before. And now that I'm in this Anatolian Classroom Initiative, I do hope to take this experience of teaching and trying to inspire others with what I've learned and what I've done, and giving back to my community to a larger scale. And I do believe that it's a powerful experience that I wish to help more people with.
That's very impressive and noble, so thank you for that. The next two questions are a little bit similar, but they are obviously distinct. So how do you maintain motivation and purpose throughout your career and personal life? I know you may still be learning this, as we all are, but for students, I think it's definitely a struggle for us to learn that type of balance. So hearing from your guys would be a big difference.
Okay, thank you. And I will give also a shout out to FIRST Robotics. We have some national winners in our district. So FIRST Robotics is an awesome program. So just jump on there. So what keeps me motivated? Students, right? I like I said, I've been a teacher for a long time. So I still try to continue to volunteer. I have some students I help with reading, and to see them so excited when they pass their standardized test this year really, keeps me grounded on what's important, because I deal with a lot of bad adult behavior, and that can really make you wonder, why am I here? Why did I put myself through all of this to become a school board member when I was happy being a teacher and interacting with the students? So it's important to continue to remember that. I have a special needs son who looks at the world in a different way than I do, and that always also keeps me very grounded. He's not judgmental. He's very welcoming. and he sees the world in a better light than most of us do. So he helps to keep me in that vision. You know, my husband was one of the victims of the Parkland shooting, and it does make it very difficult some days to believe in the good in the world. So it's really important that you find your inner peace, that you, whatever your faith is, that you look to your faith to make sure that even when the world looks bad, that there are good things happening. And then you go into a school and you see the students and they're excited and they're doing FIRST robotics, or they're playing the violin, and they're just so excited about being part of something bigger than themselves. And it reminds you that the world is not as evil as sometimes it looks. So those are kind of the things that keep me motivated.
I think that was a great answer to the question. I think I have sort of a different approach to this. I think it's best, especially what I've discovered in college, is to not rely on motivation, but instead rely on your values and your discipline, your sense of discipline. I think a lot of times we tend to overemphasize the value of motivation or passion or just temporary things that kind of give us the sense of duty to our work. But I think what's more important is kind of to have a system of values that align with what you're doing, and to genuinely believe in the work that you do, or the field you study, or like the extracurricular activities you participate in, like robotics. I think it's really important to also surround yourself with people that are committed to living the best life they can. A lot of times our environment has a huge impact on our behavior, and I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have done the work that I do had it not been for the people that support me in this journey. So I think it's really important to have a framework that helps you maintain your discipline and motivation.
I mean, I feel like the purpose of knowledge is to be shared. That's why knowledge exists. And I mean, the more I learn and the more I share with people the things that I've learned and my experiences that I've lived, the more that knowledge grows in value. People can actually do things and add on to that knowledge that I've shared with them. And I also learn new things about other people and about myself as I'm teaching a subject, or as I'm trying to just guide people by sharing my academic story. And to see that people are able to do things with that knowledge that they weren't able to before, or to see that I have some sort of impact on my community and on all these different people that may not even be from any community that I'm part of, is an experience that's really profound. And I think that keeps me motivated to pursue these educational activities that I'm currently pursuing, I could say.
Thank you. So we have one more question that we've selected, and then Ember is going to go ahead and ask questions from the chat, so everyone that's been watching so far. So for the last one, amidst your busy schedule, how do you stay true to your core values and beliefs?
Well, I exercise a lot. I find that, it's important to give yourself time to reflect on what the day has brought, and not to react. So I do find that walking or swimming does that, in terms of what is valuable to me, what am I going to react to, what am I going to just let go. And I think it's important that you give yourself your own time every day to reflect on how the day has gone and just find some inner peace, because the world today is very divisive, and people will say things and insist on what you meant when you didn't mean things that way. So it's important not to just initially react and just kind of figure out, I've learned to grow thick skin. And I think what is important, and I wish we would teach students better, is to deflect, right? I think what happens in today's world with the as Ali was referring to before, students like TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat, they absorb all of the things that people throw at them, right? They think that just because you said something that it identifies them or it's true. And we have to teach people to deflect, right? You have to be able to not let it become part of your psyche. You know, I say this often. I was adopted when I was younger, and it wasn't really as accepted. Sorry, I just realized I muted myself. I was adopted when I was younger, and people pick on me, but my parents taught me to say, well, my parents picked me, yours had to take what they got. And I think when I look back at it now as an adult, how important that is, because it stops that negative conversation, right? And it allows you to keep your power. It's so important for us as adults to show students and younger people how to keep your own power, because just because someone says something or does something doesn't mean that you're any different. It's not your problem, right? It's theirs. And I really think it's a huge issue on why we have such a mental health problem in our country or in our world, really, because we don't know how to deflect things. We just absorb them. So exercise to me is the best way to release some of that anxiety and frustration that I get. And just helps me not to be angry all the time.
I think that one thing that kind of helps me find value in this busy world is to acknowledge that winning does not mean beating others, right? So it's possible to succeed and win without putting others down. I think one thing that I didn't realize until starting college at Yale is that competition doesn't have to be one person against another, right? I think that one of the most successful features that define someone who's achieves great things in life is their ability to kind of work well in group settings and communicate well with other people. The world in college, and also especially the pre-professional world, is very competitive and cutthroat. So finding value and a sense of tranquility in this process is kind of a matter of collaborating with others and understanding that you can't do everything on your own. None of us are fully self-aware, and none of us really know everything. We're all trying to understand to the best of our abilities. So I think it's important to be in conversation with others that are struggling with the same things as you, and also finding your inner peace, whatever means that be through.
I also believe that it's important to recognize that more often than not, in certain settings, especially settings of conflict, people are not necessarily there to engage in a bad faith argument with you. They might have problem communicating their intentions or their ideas, or it may come off as something that's offensive perhaps, but I mean, it's important to keep an open mind and to recognize that at the end of the day, especially in educational settings, everyone's there to learn and everyone's there to add something to themselves, and to keep that perspective in mind in life overall, that people are not after you or coming to get you, and that you should just stay positive and try to contribute and to get what you can from that quid pro quo exchange. Although I'm not claiming that such relationships are transactional. I'm just saying that it's beneficial to both sides. I mean, it's important. I believe that that's a mindset that contributes to a person's well-being and to the health and integrity of such media, I'd say.
Thank you all. So that was the final pre-selected questions. I'm going to turn it over to Albert, who will now be asking all of the questions from the chat. So again, I just want to personally say thank you. Hearing all of your responses as a student has been so helpful, and I'm sure that everyone else can agree.
Everyone else does agree. Well, I'm Albert, so now I'm going to continue with the questions that have been written in the chat. So far, we've got 2. The first one by Salen Konak. I would like to give her the opportunity to ask the question herself, if she wants to. If she's still here. Salen Konak, would you like to ask your question?
I don't see them in the Zoom right now, so I think you may just want to ask it.
Okay, in that case, her question was, what are the best extracurricular activities that are accessible to everyone, taking into consideration educational equality?
Well, I think the extracurricular activities really would depend on where you're from and, you know, what you have interest in. But if we kind of had to pick one, I think that chess actually is a really good extracurricular activity. It's not a whole lot of, it's not expensive, right? To get the chessboard, and it really teaches so many things within that particular learning experience, and it's fun. We have a lot of chess programs at our school, but you know, I would say it's hard to say there's just one or two, because what happens in our country and what happens in countries across the world, there are other things that are more important. So it would be really hard to pick one, but I think access to any extracurricular activity that provides students with an outlet to get rid of frustration or anxiety and to be able to work better as a team would be helpful. But I think it would be hard to prescribe that like one globally because everybody's so different. But if I had to pick one, I'd say chess.
To give a more personal answer, I'd say that I've been doing ceramic sculpting for 4 years, and it's been a great avenue for me to channel my creativity and also relax. A lot of times, the extracurriculars we see in college tend to be quite similar across various student types. A lot of students do school clubs and conferences or competitions, but I think it's really valuable to find 1 or 2 things that are unique to ourselves. For me, that was doing ceramic sculptures, and it can be anything like chess or any other form of expression that we seem fit. I think there's no extracurricular that is inherently better than others. It's just that doing things that you would really enjoy and are good at is a great way to set yourself apart from others, and just to help you find your way of expressing yourself and your way of finding value in life.
My go-to advice in building a good extracurricular activity is usually to find a community of people that are interested in the same thing that you're interested in, and to motivate each other to accomplish things that you couldn't do alone. I do think being engaged in a community outside of the classroom, whether it a community of robotics or a book club, or perhaps like something more directed towards the arts, and to help each other grow inside that community is definitely an extracurricular activity that'll both help you develop as a person and help you develop in whatever discipline the community is about. And that'll also give you a lot of good memories that you can perhaps use in your high school college application essays one day, if you want to look at extracurriculars from that perspective.
Okay, and later the second question in the chat, which is from Riva actually, it reads, do you have any tips for students to convey their experiences to admission officers as they have gone above and beyond with the resources offered to them in respect of their socioeconomic backgrounds? Kind of a hefty question, but I think you got it, guys. Riva, do you want every single one of the panelists to answer? Because you mentioned...
It's up to you. Okay. I know that maybe Ali and Casey may have a little bit more recent experience with admissions officer, but Ms. Hickson is obviously very knowledgeable about the education system. That's the word. So I think her perspective is just as helpful.
Perfect.
Seasoned is a good word, I guess. I know that you have to write essays in order to get in, and that really, I think, is the reason for them asking you to do essays. And that's the place where you can tell them, you don't have to tell them your GPA or any of those things, because that's already in the application part. I think you really should make sure that those essays are personable and conveying the information that you weren't able to capture in the other part of the application.
I think another thing to note is that oftentimes college also know that they're dealing with teenagers and high school students. I think no one has to be perfect and no one has to kind of show in their application that they're flawless. I think it really goes a long way to show a very consistent and unique application throughout your recommendations and your essays. Especially the essays, I think, are just a way to show your personality and your unique voice. For me, I think what I did was I used special metaphors in my life and certain events that connected with each other in a unique way to set myself apart from others and show that I have a unique story to tell. I think admission officers definitely have a lot of experience and they read tons of applications every day. So I think it's not a matter of just showing that you're perfect or that you're better than others, but showing that you can provide a perspective to the college that is unique to you, that makes you valuable.
I think the go above and beyond part is should especially be emphasized in your letters of recommendation and the counselor letter that your school's educational counselor writes to each college that you're applying to, because those are the people who give your high school's context and who view you as an educator or as a mentor inside that context, and those are the people who can really tell whether you've gone above and beyond, and their support really means volumes to admissions officers. So make sure that you're communicating your activities with your teachers and your school counselor correctly, and that they have a general sense of what you accomplished throughout your high school career, so that they may vouch for you when you mention all these activities, so that they may claim that you indeed are an exceptional student who has exceeded their expectations.
Thank you all. That was really great advice.
Okay, now, since I am the founder of a political organization, YPolCon, it is time to get a little bit political. JK, don't worry, I'm not going to ask about your political beliefs, it's just about the intersection of education and politics, because I wrote some questions down myself. The first one would be, how do changes in government impact the allocation of resources in public schools, and would you personally advocate for a school curriculum that remains the same regardless of the administration that is in power?
Well, yes, and yes. So education should not ever be political. I guess I shouldn't say it in that way, right? Because it should be fluid in the way that it should be reflective of what's happening in the world and what kind of skills our students need. It shouldn't be based on what a political agenda is for different policymakers that come through. So, science is science, regardless of where you live or where it happens. It does change, and that should be reflected. History is history, right? You can't change history. You may make new history and you would update it, but I do think it's really important that education is based on factual information and skills that are required of students and not on any kind of political agenda.
I would totally agree. I think history has shown time and time again that developments in sciences and the arts goes hand in hand with freedom. I think for there to be a lot of development in the sciences and the arts and humanities, I think there has to be the sense that you can learn for the sake of learning. I think that's the beauty of being in school, is that you're encouraged to inquire without seeking an immediate benefit or without directly expecting something in return. I think education is a way for people to explore things without kind of having any set expectations in mind. I think that's the beauty of a liberal arts education as well, because you get to explore other fields that do not have to conform to your primary field of study. To add on to that, I think I would argue that encouraging students to explore fields that they're not used to is a great way to teach them what they like and also what they don't like, which I think is an equally valuable insight. Also, in terms of policy, I'd say that the privatization of education and also the restriction of certain resources in schools is a huge setback to our educational systems, and I think we should encourage teaching to be done by teaching professionals and not politicians or religious leaders.
While schools should be conveying the facts, like the facts of the sciences and the humanities and history, I believe that they should also be instilling some sort of critical thinking into students and encouraging the common phrase is the marketplace of ideas. Schools, especially colleges, should be a place where students can discuss critically what they believe is right and wrong, so that they may, as independent individuals, form their own world views and their beliefs themselves. And I believe that is, in a way, the purpose of education, to both give students the information and the tools to process that information, to come up with something. They'll guide them in their lives. And I believe every political opinion and view could be discussed and debated in educational institutions, as long as such discussions are done respectfully and in a way that respects science and history and facts and other people's feelings to a certain extent.
Okay, thank you all for the insightful answers. Now, from your point of view, what role does urban planning play in quality and equitable education in providing it? And specifically, as to examples, we could talk about the disparity in Black and white neighborhoods in America, or for example, immigrant-based neighborhoods in Europe.
Well, I think it's important to have schools that are easily accessible to places, so that you have schools in those neighborhoods where they don't have to worry about how they're getting there in terms of transportation. We have 241 schools in our district, so there are a lot of schools, that give them access, their boundary to a school, so that they don't have to travel too far to get there. And, I think it's important that the facility, or if it's online, that they have the access to the online pieces of it if they're not close to the building, so that they can physically be in a place where they can have access to the education. And, it's important when we're building out different communities that the education system partners with the developers to make sure who's going to be living in those new developments that they're having, and what kind of education are they going to need. It's important. We have a planning department specifically for that, so that we can pre-plan and know ahead, we need more seats for this many students, or we're going to have this many less here, and how do we adjust that, which is a thing we're going through now with repurposing. But it's important that those go together, so that what population is going to be in what areas, so that you're sure you can provide them the education that's required.
I also think it's important to stress that educational development can't be separated from environmental safety and just safety in general. I think schools should be, first of all, safe and clean for everyone. I think if we're having to discuss, for example, matters of gun violence in the United States, or just environmental protection issues everywhere in the world, I think it's not exactly a separate issue from educational equality. I think just any form of human development requires safety and health. So I think those are two important things that we should prioritize.
Well, the efficient use of technology could also be a way to circumvent this problem. Like we talked about online education and hybrid education a lot. I believe that if we supply such neighborhoods with the means of accessing information outside the classroom as well, that could be a great supplement to what they might not be given in a physical setting. Although I do think that that's just a temporary solution to a problem that requires more concrete policy to really rectify.
Okay, thank you for your amazing answers, really deep. Now, just one more question from my side and later two more from some of the people from the audience. What challenges do you face as an educator when you come across students who abide by different political or social views, and how do you try to embrace these?
Well, as a science teacher, like I said, it is kind of easier because science is science, right? It really didn't have to get into a lot of that. But now as a board member, obviously, it's really important to take into consideration all of those different pieces to make sure that, again, the diversity that we have in our community is represented and that we're sensitive and addressing the different cultural needs of our huge diversity in the system. So I think the main thing is listening to people and not immediately thinking that your way is the right way, and being able to be collaborative so that you can see how it's possible. You're not ever going to make everybody happy. We'll all learn that very quickly in life, right? But you can address it in a way that's collaborative and that you can be sure that everyone's voice is heard and reflected in the policies and the procedures that you have going on. For example, we just decided that we're going to not allow cell phones in the classroom, which obviously is a culture shock for students. In our country anyway. I don't know if it's that way across the world, but I think more for parents than students. I think students will follow whatever procedures you give them if you explain why they are and you're really consistent with the way that you implement them. And that's really important, is to make sure that whatever you decide to implement, that you're consistent, because that's important for students to have that. Otherwise it's haphazard and then they don't see the value in any of it. And I did learn that early on as a teacher. You can't tell Johnny you're going to give him a detention for talking and say it 100 times and then he never gets a detention, because then everybody's going to talk because Johnny never got a detention. So I just think it's important that we work together to make the right procedures and policies, and then that we implement them consistently across the board.
I personally think it's really important to treat students as adults. I see some of my students in this conference, and one thing I always stress when working with students is that I kind of want to trust my students to take responsibility for their education. I think it's really important to acknowledge that all students have a better sense of their identity than we as educators do. So I think it's really important to be able to communicate well with students and also address their specific needs.
I agree. I do believe we should be treating everyone, including students, with some amount of decency and respect. And we should be treating them as an individual, respecting their individual rights and beliefs. And we should be explaining why we do the things we do and why we expect the things we expect from them. And we should be, educators should be setting an example, not just expecting students to do what they tell them to do, but also setting an example through behavior. And if educators can establish themselves as proper role models and also moderate the medium they're located in and establish that respect in their communications, then I believe that a lot of problems regarding this issue can be avoided.
Okay, thank you for your answers. Catherine Zapanta, a member from the audience, has asked another question. What do you think is the major problem in our education today worldwide, and how do you think it should be addressed?
I think a huge problem in our education, at least in the United States, is that it is political, that politics has found a way into what we teach our students. And I would imagine that's happened in some other places. And also just the distractions that are happening for our students. I think the mental health concerns, the concern of how safe you are in your school because of all of the things that are happening across the world, not just in the United States, leaves students vulnerable in a place where it's very difficult for them to focus and be able to really learn the way they used to learn. So I think it's important for us as teachers, as policymakers, as leaders, to make sure that we mitigate those distractions for our students. As I said when I started, students need to feel safe first and foremost. They're not going to learn if they don't feel safe in their environment. And it doesn't just mean from active shooters or things of that nature, but bullying. They should feel like they're not going to be chastised because of the way they look or things that they believe, or that maybe they're not up to the same par as other students. So we have to make sure that we give them a safe place to learn, to grow, and give them opportunities. And in order to do that, we have to be able to reduce the distractions that occur, which add to the mental health concerns. And I do think that that's global. I don't think that's specific to the United States. And I think the social media has a lot to do with that, right? And again, go back to the idea that students often absorb and don't deflect. And we have to do a better job of teaching them those skills.
I also think the politicization of education is a huge issue. For me, I think especially given the rise of social media communication, it's important that every student knows how to maintain careful discourse and think rigorously and consume information. I think a lot of times we tend to overemphasize the importance of STEM to the extent that we kind of disregard the importance of the humanities. I think it's really important to be able to discern reliable information from unreliable information, to be able to know the biases and reasoning that we go through and the various methods of manipulation that kind of distort modern discourse. To be able to navigate a democracy and to be citizens, I think it's important to be able to express your opinions and communicate with others. A lot of times, especially in Turkey, we tend to teach Turkish or English in a way that kind of focuses more on memorizing facts rather than being able to express yourself in a seminar or just being able to talk to others about things that matter. I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. And also just things that happen between students, like bullying and just beauty standards or anxiety, etc. Like, I think those issues are also really important to address.
Right, and I think in order to address those issues and in order to distill all these political or otherwise social distractions, students do need proper support systems, which may come in the form of their families, their teachers, or their school counselors. And it is in some ways the responsibility of the school itself to provide that support system that'll help students navigate their educational careers while keeping those distractions away, or the school might direct them to the say proper resources where, if they have a mental health problem, where they may seek mental health care, etc.
So I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. You guys have been here with us answering all of our questions. It means so much to us. If there's any way students can reach you with questions they may have at a later time, please put your contact info in the chat, and we'll also try to spread it on our social media and websites corresponding with this meeting. With that, I just want to pass it over to Anya and Albert for some concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining today's webinar. I really appreciate all of our panelists' time, as well as all of our viewers' time and questions, and I hope everyone was able to learn a lot. Just to close out, if you would like to join ActionPAKT, which is one of the organizations that has helped put this together, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a description of what we do. So we have 3 main goals. The first is education. So we focus on things occurring all over the world, like current events, and we'll educate both our students as well as outside students outside of our organization about these current events. And then after that, we focus on communication, teaching students to not only discuss things, but reach consensus rather than only debating and butting heads. We want to help students be able to compromise on effective solutions. And last, we focus on action, where we teach our students to take action and work from their communities to create lasting change. So right now we have involvement from about 1,300 students in 26 countries all over the world, and we would really love to have you join. So if you're interested in starting a chapter of this organization in your area, Reva has sent some information in the chat. And then also if you're interested in joining one of the local chapters, which may exist already, you can just use those same links. So yeah, and feel free to reach out to me or any of the other organizers or panelists over here if you have additional questions. But thank you so much for joining. So now I'm going to hand it off to Albert to talk more about YPolCon.
Okay, so hopefully this is not going to be too repetitive, but we're immensely grateful to all our panelists for being here. Thank you, Debbie, Hickson, Kuze, and Ali. This has been an incredible discussion with your incredibly, really, sufficient and deep thoughts about the integration and intersection of politics and education. Just so you know, I'm the founder of YPolCon, that stands for the Young Politicians Convention. To anyone who wants to join the organization, you can also check our socials. We're present on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and more social media platforms. We're pretty much everywhere. And basically our organization focuses on engaging youth with politics, because if you do not engage with politics, then politics will engage with itself for you. And if you do not cast your ballots, then the parliaments that are elected are not representative of our society, and therefore youth cannot actually see legislation that helps green deals, the environment, or to lower housing prices down, or for example social welfare programs, Medicare, etc. So many of these programs that youth is trying to put into legislation and to have everywhere, that are not being implemented by so many of the legislators, because we're not casting our votes and because we think that we cannot change politics. So if you believe that you do not want to engage with politics because politics is a bunch of BS, here's the time to change it all and perhaps make your voice count. So yeah, check out our socials. It's YPolCon Young Politicians Convention. Immensely grateful to all of our speakers and audience tonight. Thank you for joining, and have a good one.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Recording